Chapter 7 of Mystery at Number 6. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Mystery at Number 6 by Augusta Huell Seaman. Chapter 7. Revelation. After it was all over, Bernice thought it the strangest afternoon she had ever spent, but at the time her mind was so much occupied with other things that she never realized how the hours went. Sydney drove them to the little roadside store 5 miles away, a wee little place where the chief commodity for sale seemed to be ginger ale and other liquid refreshments of a like nature. As in a dream, she watched Delight make her simple purchases, and then they started to drive back. "But if I get back and go home so soon," commented Delight, "they'll wonder how it has happened. It takes a long time to walk that 10 miles. They will not like it if they know I have ridden with you, with anyone." "Oh, that's simple," Sydney laughed. "If that's the case, we'll take a good long drive and land you back home about the time you'd naturally arrive there. So much the better." "You just drive ahead then and don't pay any attention to us. We're talking," commanded Bernice in a significant tone, and Sydney, quick to take the hint, devoted himself exclusively to the wheel, while the two girls, snuggled down in the back seat, remained absolutely oblivious of all outward affairs. It was a long story that Delight told, partly in the cracker patois that she naturally used, partly in the simple but labored good English that she sometimes tried to affect. The substance of it, as Bernice afterward retailed it to Sydney, was as follows. She had always lived in the Everglades, as far as she knew or could remember, in the very depths of them for the greater part of her life. Whether she was born there or not, she did not know. She had always been with Jerry and his Indian wife, Wanetka. Wanetka had been very good to her, very kind and loving. In fact, both of them were. The first camp or home she remembered was on a hammock or wooded knoll in the Glades near the region of Fort Myers, but even that town was many miles away across the big cypress swamp. Jerry used to go for supplies occasionally in his canoe. He got Wanetka anything she wanted. He even brought her at one time a little hand sewing machine, and the Indian woman made many pretty things with it for her to wear. The girl declared that she was very happy at this period. She loved the wilds and knew no other kind of life. Later Jerry decided to go to another region, and they moved the camp to the north side of the Glades. There were many other moves, sometimes near the Miami region, sometimes on the west side. Always they kept well within the Glades. In the main it was always Jerry who went out to the towns, though occasionally Wanetka went. Jerry often acted as guide to some tourist who wanted to make a trip into the Glades. Sometimes it would be just for hunting or trapping. Sometimes a man would take an exploring expedition through them. Jerry knew them as no one but the Indians knew them. At this point Bernice had inquired, not without some trepidation, whether Jerry himself was partly Indian as it had been rumoured. Delight replied that he had once said he thought he was part Indian, but neither his father nor mother was an Indian. They were both native Floridians from somewhere near Fort Myers. His real name was not Sawgrass but Simpson. The former had been given him as a joke by the first person he ever guided through the Glades. "These wilds are overgrown with the terrible tall grass. with edges as sharp as a knife or saw, called sawgrass. It was almost impossible to cut one's way through it. Jerry was so expert at overcoming this difficulty that the man had nicknamed him Jerry Sawgrass, and he had kept the name to this day. But he had once been told that one of his grandparents was a Seminole Indian, and he thought it was his Indian inheritance that made him love the Glades so much. He preferred to live in them and was very fond of his Indian wife. She was a real Seminole. It was a long time before Delight ever thought of asking any questions about herself. She never dreamed there was anything to ask. Jerry and Wanetka were as her father and mother to her. She had never known any other, and as she almost never saw anyone else, there were no questions in her mind. She was happy, that was enough. But when she was about 11 or 12 years old, a strange thing happened. They had just come to live near Fort Lauderdale and were camped on the New River several miles inland from the town. She had gone out one morning to roam in the woods, but came back after a while and lay down in the sun close to the back of the hut. She had almost fallen asleep when she heard the two talking inside the hut. They evidently thought she was still away, for as she listened, because she had nothing else to do and could not very well avoid it, she heard Wanetka ask Jerry if she might take Delight into town with her the next day. He replied a trifle angrily, "No, no, no! Now, don't begin that. You know what the understanding was. She's not to go near people. It'll be the beginning of trouble. She's getting older now, and'll begin to understand and ask questions. It won't do, I tell you. He gave strict orders and won't have 'em disobeyed." Instant wonder sprang up in the mind of Delight. What was it all about? She could not think. She had never dreamed there was any mystery about her. Who was it that did not wish her to see people, and why? She lay very still and listened longer, hoping she might hear something else. They were quiet a long time. Jerry was mending a fishing rod, and Wanetka was putting things away in the hut. She liked to keep it tidy. They had not been there very long, and things were not in their right places yet. Presently she heard Wanetka ask Jerry, "Where shall I put this?" "Here, give it to me. It's time that thing was destroyed. She might get hold of it some time. She can't read, but it might make her curious. I'll burn it." She heard him answer, and then there was a sound of tearing, as if a book had been ripped to pieces. Nothing else happened, and after a while they both went out to fish in the river farther upstream. Neither one had seen her. It was then that she stole into the hut and looked in the fireplace. The fire had gone out. There was a considerable pile of ashes and the stiff covers of a book that had charred but not burned up. On one of the covers was a word or two in printing. She did not know what it was. She had never seen any books and very few printed words, only those on the canned goods and things that Jerry brought home from the towns. But something in her mind told her it meant something, and she saved it. Then she poked around in the ashes and presently found in the heap several pieces of paper that had not all been burned but only charred around the edges. And on these were strange marks, not much like the printing on the book cover, and yet not entirely unlike them. She did not then know it was handwriting, but the same feeling made her sure that this too was something which, if she could find out what it meant, would help her to make something out of this strange new puzzle.